Good morning. It's an honor to introduce our next speaker, Dan Lohmeyer. He picked up his undergrad and grad degrees from MIT, went on to McKinsey and Microsoft. From there, he built a billion-dollar business from scratch at Cisco, billion-dollar product line, and now GE is lucky enough to have him as our Director of Products at GE Digital. Please help me welcome Dan Lohmeyer.
Is this microphone on? I wanted to check after yesterday. Perfect, I can hear it. So it's a privilege to be here. I'm super excited. We're going to have a number of people talk, similar to Andre did, around what Predix Edge is doing. There's two key messages that I really want to deliver. Number one is that Predix Edge is real. It's live, it's in production. I'll take you through a number of different examples of that. But number one, it's live, it is real. And then number two, GE is committed to digital, and digital is committed to Predix Edge. And so if you pay attention to nothing other than those two key points, I've accomplished my mission. But again, those are the two key things I want to reinforce as part of this. What I wanted to do is focus most of my conversation really around what customers are trying to accomplish, and then how Edge helps them address those scenarios. And so I want to just start with, similar to how many people have started the presentation, is just talk about why this matters and why this is important to customers. I'll skip some of the headlines. I'll jump straight to the bottom in that in most of the customer scenarios that we see, customers usually want to do a couple different things. Number one is they have assets that are in very distributed environments. Those environments often have very limited latency, very limited bandwidth. In some cases, the connection is not always there. They need a reliable way of getting information from those assets into some other system, either on premises or in the cloud, and they need some local edge connectivity to allow them to do so. That's number one. Number two is the cost associated with the bandwidth as well as cloud storage can be expensive, especially when you're talking about the volumes of data that we often see in industrial use cases. And so the ability to do local edge-based processing, filtering, aggregation of data, and then only transmit up that relatively small percent of data that you really need to, the cloud can actually save companies a lot of money, both on the bandwidth as well as then their cloud-based storage. And then the third key thing we see is around reliability. And I love to use analogies, I love to use examples. There was a very interesting story that happened about 2 weeks ago with Tesla. Tesla's done a lot of things quite amazing. You may recall 2 years ago when a hurricane was coming at Florida, they were able to, using basically an edge-based capability within the vehicle, unlock additional battery processing capability to give people the ability to go from 200 miles to 230 miles and get out of the disaster area. Right? That's a great example of how you can do edge-based control of a local device. But they also had some challenges 2 weeks ago, as some of you may have seen in the news, where it was Labor Day weekend. They gave their users the ability to unlock and control their vehicle using their phone. Guess what? The server went down. So you had a lot of people who essentially were stranded. Some people were stranded outside of their car. They simply could not get in. They could not go where they needed to because they simply didn't have a way of locally connecting with the device. Now, it turns out this didn't actually impact all the Tesla models. One of the models, the Model 3, they actually thought in advance, and they said, we shouldn't just fully rely upon a cloud-based capability. We should give local Bluetooth access. So if you had one of those models and you actually installed that version of the app on your phone, you could actually get into your vehicle. But otherwise, if you fully relied upon the cloud to get into your vehicle, you were out of luck. And so that's one of the reasons why Edge is quite important. You'll see we're going to use a lot of examples throughout this presentation. Intel is here. Intel is a fantastic partner and customer. We do a lot of work together. This was some work that they had done back in 2018, so a fair amount of time ago now. They essentially took a set of fan filters. Think of this as a key part of your fabrication process, where you essentially need to get the particulate matter out of the environment so it doesn't interfere with your production. And so those fan filters actually failed quite often. And so in this case, what Intel did is they attached an accelerometer to the top of the filter. They used our edge-based stack to essentially analyze the data. And as you can think about it quite simply, if that thing is vibrating a little bit, the fan's probably turning around. If it's vibrating too much, it's tending towards a failure mode. And we need to do some type of predictive maintenance activity or simply replace that fan filter so it doesn't fail. You can see some of the statistics, and they're quite astounding when you actually look at the reduction in terms of the unscheduled downtime, essentially being able to reduce the amount of traffic that was transmitted up into the Predix cloud environment. And this is just one of many cases of companies who are now using Edge and using it in production. What's really exciting about Intel is if you think about a fan filter in terms of the criticality of your assets, it's actually not super critical. And so what Intel is now looking to do is, now that they validated that it works, using this fan filter is extend this into their motors, into a lot of the robotics, and go from there. So we appreciate the partnership with Intel. There's 3 different use cases that we see in general around Edge. I want to walk through each of those 3 and share some of the learnings that we had, because what customers are doing is actually not entirely consistent with what we thought customers would do 2 years ago. The 3 scenarios are, number 1, an intelligent data pump. So I have all this information being gathered at the edge for my IT, for my OT systems. How do I do local data aggregation, local data analysis, and then only transmit up the information that I really need to from that edge device? That's scenario 1. Early on, we thought this was going to be the most prevalent use case for Predix Edge. It's actually number 2, which is I don't want to just do that very simple amount of data aggregation. I actually want to do local analytics. I want to apply my own local application and have that run at the edge. This could be something that I custom built. It could be an analytic that I co-developed with a partner or with GE. And I want to be able to do that in a very safe way and a controlled way. So that's number 2. That's actually what the majority of our use cases are right now with customers in terms of how they're using our edge stack. And then the 3 one is really a leading edge approach, which is how can you actually use the edge software to change the underlying operations of the device itself? Okay? We'll take you through a couple different examples of this, but when you think about the additional security and safety measurements that you have to have in place, you're now changing the physical operations of that device. You're changing essentially how the device operates, and so when you think about compliance and all the enforcement that you would need to have, this is a very advanced use case. And so we'll go through a number of different customer examples and talk about each of those in turn. In fact, there's another customer example, which really talks to the first 2 use cases. This is a very large elevator and escalator manufacturer. They have over 1 million elevators in production. Okay? So invariably, all of you have ridden up and down in one of their elevators. And they essentially have 2 different scenarios where they're using the Predix Edge today. Like many industrial companies, you have a lot of assets already in production. It's not like in the consumer space where people refresh their device every 3 years, or in the commercial space where people refresh their devices every 5 to 10 years. These customers don't refresh their devices that often because they're expensive, they're hard to install, it takes a lot of work. And so the most important thing you need to be able to do is get sensors installed into existing equipment, essentially add in an edge-based device capability that allows you to do that local analytic. What this company essentially wants to do is measure how long does it take for an elevator to go between floors? How long does it take for the doors to open and close? And if those start to deviate, that means something's probably wrong with the elevator, right? And then can they do predictive maintenance based upon that? So sub-scenario 1 here is, for all those legacy assets, let's go retrofit those with a Predix Edge device. But for anything new, we're actually just building it directly into the elevator, right? I'm not needing to add a new device. I essentially can add that controller into my elevator directly. It natively runs the Predix Edge, does the local analytics, and allows me to transmit those types of events up to the cloud. And of course, once it's up in the cloud, you can do all the amazing things that Andre talked about around how do I analyze the data, how do I optimize it, how can I do different simulations. There's a number of things that we provide. We have partners that we work with as well to do that predictive maintenance, to do different optimizations, to do dashboards and such. And so this company has over 70,000 devices. They're adding 1,200 a week. They'll be at 100,000 by the end of the year and up to 500,000 in 2 years. As you can imagine, it's not just simply slap a sensor on a trash can and be on your way, right? You essentially have to retrofit these elevators. You have to add in the control systems, the connectivity. So it actually takes a bit of time to work through 500,000 elevators. So again, it's real. The second key part of my message is that GE is committed to digital, and digital is committed to edge. And part of the reason why that is so important for us, I represent a broader portfolio within GE, is that one of the hardest problems we have with industrial IoT and deploying digital solutions is how do you get the data, right? And a lot of companies spend a lot of time just trying to get their local IT systems, their local OT systems, to get those connected, to get the information tagged, and then be able to transmit that up into the cloud in a very reliable way. And so in order for all of the other things that we do within GE, as well as what many of our customers do with their applications, the only way that those things work is if you have the data. I ran out of time, but Andre, I wanted to ask you a question around like, how do you get the data? How do you actually feed this up into it? But invariably, you'll have to have some way, right, of getting that information up so you can run all of those simulations and models. And that's essentially what Predix Edge does, right? We have essentially a turnkey device. We'll take you through the form factors. We have a virtual machine. We have an embed option where essentially that gets deployed locally. It allows you to do the data collection, local analytics, and then the information that really you want to upload then into the cloud or on premises, if that's your preference, that comes through the Edge stack. I mentioned that a lot of customers have had assets in production for a long, long time. I actually visited a pulp and paper manufacturer, the second largest in the world. They had an electric motor that was over 100 years old. 100 years old. I was like, how does it work? And they're like, it runs on 25 hertz electricity. My bachelor's, my master's was electrical engineering and computer science. I'm like, 25 hertz? I actually don't even remember that. So I had to go back and look it up. Sure enough, around the turn of the century, 1900 or so, 25 hertz was actually kind of popular in Canada, northeastern parts of the United States, and they still run that motor. And so for them, essentially being able to use our software, they use our asset management software to optimize their manufacturing process. They're not installing a new electric motor, right? They're essentially taking that existing motor, they're equipping it with sensors, and then they're using our software to optimize the performance. And so that's why Edge is so important to our portfolio, is this is one of the key problems that customers struggle with. And for the rest of our software to work, you have to have the ability to be able to get information up and into the cloud. One last case study, and then I'll hand it over to Bill, is SIG Combo Block. SIG, Swiss Industrial Group, they're based in Zurich. They essentially do two things. Number one is they make cartons, and number two, they make filling machines. So think about going to the grocery store, getting a carton of orange juice or a can of stewed tomatoes, right? They essentially make the machines that fill the orange juice into that carton, and they sell the cartons as well. They make zero profit selling the machines. They make all their profit selling the cartons, right? Sound familiar? Xerox model, Xerox model, razor blades, so similar things. So for them, it's really, really, really important that that machine is running all the time, because they're not making money selling the machine, they're making the money selling the carton. And so what they wanted to do is they essentially wanted to do predictive maintenance on those machines. They wanted to be able to pre-dispatch technicians to service those machines before they broke, because if that machine isn't filling, that's really bad for their customers, that's bad for their business as well. You can see some of the statistics in terms of the size. What's interesting to know about SIG is they have installations across 950 sites. Some of these sites are in very remote areas. They don't necessarily have secure, reliable connections. And so what they did is they deployed our Predix Edge software stack. You can see here that it essentially uses an OPC UA collector to get information off of their sensors, off of their devices. They installed a dead banding app, which essentially says, as long as the values for different parameters I care about are within these tolerances, don't transmit up to the cloud, right? Because that allows you to remove a lot of the noise. Over 90% of the noise we're able to remove from the system by having this local dead banding app, right? But you essentially want to be able to track it over time, so at some point if it extends from the original source point too much, then you want to transmit that as a signal. And then this time series gateway that runs on the Predix Edge. And this is also really important because many of these sites are remote. There was a site in Thailand where the site, like literally people finished what they were doing, they shut off the power to the entire site. They went away for the weekend, they came back on Monday, turned on the power, and our Predix Edge essentially had a lot of the data already cached. It stopped transmitting, obviously, when they killed the power to the device. Once it came back online, it continued to transmit the information back to the cloud. And the case is that SIG, they do the predictive maintenance. They use our Predix Essentials, our asset performance management. Those are all running in the cloud along with the Edge Manager that essentially allows you to control the devices. So it's real, it's in production, and it's important to what we do. With that, what I want to do is hand it over to Bill Noto. He's our product director for Predix Edge as well as OT security. Bill?
Thanks, Dan. Thanks very much. Hey, I just want to start by saying I'm really thrilled to be here. We're really thrilled to be here. What a difference a year makes, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit more about what's in Predix Edge and also give some more customer examples, right? So Predix Edge, you can connect to assets, OT sources. You have local analytics for anomaly detection and so forth. Supports local applications, so if customers want to create their own applications, those can run on Predix Edge. Data transfer with intelligent filtering, et cetera. And I'm going to go into a bit more detail on the capabilities. So with respect to connectivity and data processing, right? Native adapters and connectors. So support for EGD, very popular in GE in terms of power, in terms of wind, Baker Hughes GE. Lots of people use EGD, aeroderivative, et cetera. OSI Pi, MQTT, OPC UA, and Modbus out of the box. Similarly, out of the box support for publishing data to time series and to Event Hub. That's extensible, right? If someone wants to add an additional protocol, we have models to help them do that. And that makes it easy to add other paths for data to come in, right? Cloud forwarding, that Dan mentioned, the store and forward buffer, right? So if the connectivity is interrupted, you're buffering the data in the gateway. When the connectivity is restored, the data goes up. I probably should speed up a little bit, right? So support for apps and analytics. So Docker, multi-container-based application support built in. That's how our protocol adapters and our gateways work. That's how you can write applications and publish them on Predix Edge. Rich application services, there's a data bus architecture so the containers can talk to one another in a consistent and secure way. And analytics engines are also supported out of the box, including cSense, which is part of our OPM stack. Deployment flexibility, right? So we offer this in a variety of form factors. The easiest simple button is the Predix Edge Gateway 3002 in our partnership with Dell and Arrow. It's also available as a VM that runs on ESXi. ESXi is also very popular in GE with Power and Wind and Baker Hughes GE and others using it in their deployments today. So there's a big installed base with that. That's why we targeted that VM first. And it's available as an embedded option. So customers can take our stack and compile it to run bare metal on their system. And I'm going to talk a bit about one of our customers, Grid Automation, who's doing that. So you can deploy Predix Edge stack on whatever you want. Now, there's a range of trade-offs between those three options, from the easy button, get it out there, to the I have really bespoke custom needs and I need it to work for me. But we support all of them. And secure operations, right? So there's security in terms of how the containers talk to one another and how the applications work with one another. So one team can write an app and another team can write an app, and unless you want them to, they won't interfere with one another. The apps are sandboxed from one another. We have code signing. We have good certificate exchange for data going up to the cloud. And the device calls the cloud. The cloud does not push signals to the device. So I'm going to talk about Grid Automation, right? So this story is near and dear to my heart. They were big adopters of Predix Edge, the new stack. Here's why they wanted to use it. They have a legacy of products and a long time where they've made products for transmission and distribution, substations, a rich series of devices. And you'll hear a little bit more about this in a session later today also. They wanted to standardize how they make these things and sort of future-proof them with a contemporary architecture. They like the Docker notion. They like the ability to move some of these workloads and functions to Docker applications. And they wanted a way of getting all of this stuff working in a common platform, right? So if you think about that legacy and all those different kinds of devices, they wanted a common OS across everything so they could get better productivity out of engineering and so forth and increase the velocity. And you can see the benefit for them in terms of MPI speed and efficiency, right? So as they went to the common platform, they can make more things, support more things in a common way. Now, that's kind of just engineering productivity for them, but they also think that as their business matures, there will be more opportunities for all of the other cloud things we do. So being able to deploy applications from Edge Manager in a streamlined way without having to go to the site. They see that they're growing those business models. This is an important slide to me. There's a lot of water under the bridge in terms of our company and how we work together and all the different things that's been going on in GE in the past few years. But the key takeaways in the slide are in blue, right? There's a strong partnership between within GE, between GRC and GE Digital. We work together. This shows some of the history, so I just want to walk through it real quick. So August 2016, Predix Edge 1 and Edge Manager introduced, right? So before that, we were working on it together, both companies, both GERC and GE Digital. I'll go to the bold bullets. 2017, GRC is incubating the next generation of the Edge stack. Digital's enhancing Edge Manager. August 2017, we say, we'll go for it. We're going to do it. We're going to take this new stack and we're going to productize it. June 2018, GE Digital launches Predix Edge as a GA product with the new 2.0 stack. We've continued to do enhancements. There's a drumbeat of new releases coming out quarterly. The Predix Edge Gateway introduced in June 2019. And then going into the future, we're doing early drops of Edge Agent decoupled from the OS. And we'll get into why and how. And in 2020, we're looking at Edge Manager on-prem, right? So real high level, we see four points of differentiation for this stack: security, scalability, a full solution, and flexibility, right? So that should be a theme that you hear coming again and again. So I'm going to go a little faster. So Predix Edge Manager, Edge operations, simplified, automated, scalable. So what can you do from Edge Manager? You can deploy OS updates. You can deploy applications. You can deploy configurations on those applications that are decoupled from the application. So you can write the application logic once and have the site-specific configurations that you apply later. And you can do that at scale. So you can do it on multitudes of devices, right? So we have one customer, we mentioned, one particular customer who's got a lot of devices, right? So this thing has been proven with them. They're adding over 1,000 devices a week. It's a lot. And importantly, let me go back here. We see some customers having this as a journey, right? So they want this future container idea for application development. They're not yet sure about whether their customers or their industries are ready for edge management of this stuff, right? So locally, you can apply all the things I said Edge Manager could do with the Predix Edge Technician Console. You can deploy the OS, update the OS, deploy applications, update the applications, deploy configurations, start and stop all of that, download logs. You can do that locally with the Technician Console, and you can do that from the cloud at scale. Another case study, which we'll also go into more detail later. So GE Solar Digital is using the Predix Edge stack to read data from inverters in the field in remote locations. So their customer needs to know, hey, is that inverter connected to the grid? Is it delivering the megawatt hours for the amount of sunlight I get? And if they don't have that, they actually have liquidated damages. So it's critical to their business that they can deliver that information and show that the assets they've supplied are doing what they're supposed to do. Similarly, they want to know how the inverters are performing and be able to anticipate issues and react to them before they have bigger problems. More details to come from my friend. Okay, I'm going to hand it over to Henning, who will talk a little bit more about technology and differentiation. Thank you all for your attention.
Good morning. So I knew I'd have my hands full with this presentation. So I just want to walk through a bit the key components of the system. There's the Edge stack running on the device. What it provides you is the secure software stack for Edge connectivity, management, processing, and data transfer. At the other side of the pipe, we've got Predix Edge Manager, which allows you to manage your devices. It allows you to deploy, monitor, and manage all of those Edge fleets. Between the two, we have reliable, secure data and command communication. And you get that out of the box. You don't have to set anything up. That's already all done for you. So our architecture is fairly standard, and there's a reason for that. We want actually the device architecture to be boring. We want it to disappear into the background. The focus should be on the applications that run on it. On the cloud side, there's the Edge Manager, which gives you your device management, but it also connects to the whole Predix ecosystem, the Predix platform, providing data analytics, time series database, event hub, and as well as all the applications that run in the Predix cloud. The lower big blue box is the device stack. On the left-hand side, we've got Edge Agent. That is the command loop that communicates with Edge Manager, accepts commands from the cloud, executes them on your behalf in a secure manner, and provides status updates to Edge Manager. On the right, we have the whole application stack. It's all Docker-based applications. They communicate over a data bus, and as Bill mentioned, that's your choice whether you allow applications to communicate or not. Generally, they're sandboxed from each other. They're also sandboxed from the OS. We give you a place to store your data, both persistent as well as any configuration data, and provide basic things that you need on every Edge device. You need a store and forward mechanism. You need a way to connect to the Predix cloud to send your data up. And we also treat analytics engines as first-class citizens. So in a sense, they're just another app and managing just another configuration. But because it's so important to this use case, we treat them as first-class citizens and recognize them that way then up in Edge Manager. As Bill mentioned, we also provide the standard suite of protocol adapters. That can grow over time. This is what, right now we've hit the top ones for industry, OPC UA, Modbus, MQTT, EGD, OSI Pi. Supporting all of this is the Edge OS, and that's best described as a Yocto Systemd Docker OS. Again, it doesn't have anything proprietary in it. What we do is we put it together for you. So we've secured it, we've hardened it, we've taken out anything that you don't need for this use case, and made it ready to use. And it can run on our Edge gateway device. So that, as Bill mentioned, that is something that's ready to go. It's also available as a VM to run on an ESXi hypervisor. Others are possible. And generally, that will run on your own hardware, of course. Or there's another use case where you have some new hardware that we don't support. You want it to run bare metal on that hardware. You can also get it the source code and configure your own OS. So you might have to add drivers, that sort of thing. So what we're dealing with is large numbers of devices. We have, we validated in production. We've got one customer running with well over 50,000 devices. So that's the management side of it. And we've even gone ahead, we're working ahead of the curve and testing the application, and we've tested it with well over 500,000 devices. Now, at this scale, so different problems emerge. And so we have to help customers be able to manage these large numbers of devices. We help them do that with things like device groups, and they can search by geographic locations, and you can divide up your provisioning and your configurations for the devices into groups and profiles. So you can say, well, I want all of these devices to look the same, and send down a configuration. And you can do that for both the OS, the adapter suite that's on that device, as well as the configurations. So also at this scale, so now sort of switching down to the operation of the device itself, devices need to be very reliable, right? If you have, once in a while a problem with a few devices, well, imagine what that does when you've got 1 million out there, right? Now you've got a lot of fires to fight. So we put a lot of work into making sure that this is a fault-resilient OS, that our testing ensures that it's not going to run into power cycle failures. It's not going to do anything that's unexpected. And if something unexpected does happen, we've built in safety nets so that it can recover. One of the key priorities for us, what we realized early on, was it always has to be ready, no matter what an application is doing on the device. It always has to be ready to receive the next command from Edge Manager, because that's your last resort. If you've got a box, at a drink filling facility out in Thailand, your last resort may be to reboot the device. So that operation is always available. So our background is in security. We started out doing the World Tech Firewall, operational technology firewall. And so we put a lot of effort into security of devices. That's been a big topic of this conference. And we want to make sure that things that we're putting into the customer environment are good for that environment. So we don't want to make the problem worse. Because we also want broad application of this device. It can go into, should be able to go into manufacturing facilities, as well as critical infrastructure, in the same way that our OT firewall is used. So it begins with, obviously, encrypted communication to the Predix cloud. The data is safe, we keep the cloud safe, and you know which device you're talking to. The edge connections originate from the device, which makes the IT people happy, because they don't have to leave their firewall open so that Predix can reach into their site. And we use a polling mechanism to request any new commands. Firmware updates, applications, they're signed, so you know where they came from. They haven't been changed, and we validate those when they get started. There are limits built into the OS on how it can be changed. We've always had to strike a balance between, well, do we make it convenient, or do we make it secure, right? That's always that trade-off. So some of the choices we made was, because we're giving your applications a sandbox to work in, everything else is locked down. So it's a read-only root FS, and the updates are atomic. You apply an image that's got a rollback mechanism, the new image is installed, and there's not package updating where you don't have a lot of control over what's coming in or out of the system. So I also already mentioned about the security model with the sandboxing. But beyond that, the OS takes a lot of care and feeding. It's not just something you set up once and deliver and be done with it. So we also monitor the vulnerabilities that emerge in open source software. So as vulnerabilities are reported, we assess them according to our threat model, see, is this something we need to respond to or not? And we will issue a patch release whenever that's necessary. So we probably do, as Bill mentioned, we do quarterly feature releases. We probably do just as many patch releases, usually for security reasons, so that the software is always available to customers that want to update with the latest security patches. We also built into the system a lot of flexibility. You've seen that there are a lot of use cases for this, a lot of variety. And we also have some legacy software to deal with. So if you already have Predix Machine running in Edge Manager, you can manage both the Edge 2.0 stack and the new Edge stack, or the legacy Edge stack, from your single Edge Manager instance. Edge Manager will adapt to whichever device is communicating with it. But more importantly, we have the flexibility to use some or all of the Edge features. If you need to get data into the cloud, the intelligent data pump use case, you probably want the Edge applications, the agent, and the data gateway. But if you're just looking for management, you can utilize Edge Manager with Edge Agent by itself. But perhaps you don't want any of that. All you want is an OS for your project. You don't want to get into all of that business of managing updates and scouring for security vulnerabilities. We'll take care of that for you. You can use the OS by itself. And since we also deploy it as a VM, that gives you some interesting options. You could, for example, use some of the excess compute on existing devices to host the VM and give you edge connectivity. You may have a custom device, so something that is not standard, non-standard drivers or drivers that we simply haven't bothered to provide yet. They don't fit into our business model. Well, you can use the OS by itself. You can build on top of it, add your drivers, and one example is that Grid Automation is doing this to make their own custom devices. So interesting case study. GE Aviation has a product called the foam wash cart. And this is a cart like you see there with soap. You could probably use it to wash your car. But what it is used for is for state-of-the-art engine cleaning. It helps to optimize the performance of the engine. And what this team did was they had their own hardware. They brought their own system, and they said, well, but we want to, we want to add our application on top of it. So we worked together with them to help them adapt our software to their hardware. And now they use it to monitor both the state of the foam wash cart itself, as well as the efficacy of the washing operation. So that helps them to optimize the washing, not wash too little, not wash too much, and make sure that they're maximizing the in-flight time of the airplane. And with that, I'll turn it over for an Edge Manager demo to Mike Johannes.
Nice job. Hey, good morning, guys. Mike Johannes. So the original plan here was to actually have a live demo so that we could really show you that this is real, right? It is actually working. Unfortunately, a live demo presents some challenges. You got to bring your laptop up here. You got to connect it up. So on the compressed timeline, the actual live demo was recorded last night, and I'm going to step you through it. We don't want to see the spinning box as I'm uploading applications and configurations and downloading them. And then actually when you see data, it takes a few minutes to actually see data that's meaningful. A couple seconds doesn't really show you much. So I've re-recorded it. I've cut out all those parts, and that's what I'm going to show you. So this is Edge Manager. I'm actually tethered to the mic here. So this is Edge Manager. Let me set the scene for you. So I have a virtual machine running on my laptop here, and it's called the Symposium demo machine, and it's online. I've enrolled it in Edge Manager, and I've actually from Edge Manager downloaded to the Edge Manager repository, and then downloaded to the device those applications, being an OPCUA simulator or an OPCUA adapter, which is connected to a simulator. So that's how it's getting its data. It's then transferring that to the data bus. Then the cloud gateway is picking up that data and sending it to the cloud. So if I can get this to run. This is Edge Manager. I'm just going to be clicking on the device here. Is it running? Yep. Okay. It is running. I'm clicking on the device here, and what you're actually going to see is eventually.
Just roll with it.
Yeah. So what you're going to see, this is actually already producing data in the cloud. And I'm going to show you the cloud is next. This is actually the simulator. The signal that it's producing is just a really noisy sinusoid. And you're going to see that then in the cloud, the noisy sinusoid, that the data is actually getting to the cloud. And the whole point of this is, we talked about edge computing and edge analytics. What I'm going to be doing next is I'm going to actually be deploying the dead banding app that was talked about earlier. And this dead banding app is going to take out all of this noise, right? So you don't want to necessarily send all this noise, you just want to send the signal. And on the right is actually, I've just added a counter. So it's counting the number of tags read and the number of tags published. And you can see right now, this is where it started. They're right in line, right? They're counting and publishing. When I deploy the deadband app, you'll see them diverge. So let's continue on. To deploy that app, in reality, I have the deadbanding application, as we talked about decoupling the app and the configs. The deadbanding application is actually already running. It's got a configuration which is just passing through the data. That deadbanding threshold is so small that it's just passing through the data. I'm going to be applying the configuration, which sets that threshold, which then tells how much data to pass or when to pass it. Did I start it over? I think I started over. So let me, this is the risks of actually putting a video in.
You can probably fast forward that.
Okay, so I could probably go back a little bit, but I'm just going to get to the punchline here. And the punchline is, you can see the deadbanding app. On the left is the noisy chart, and then after applying the deadbanding app, you can see the signal is much smoothed out. And then you can see on the right, the read counter, that's the tags that were read in, and that's the tags that were published to the cloud. And as we talked about, why is this important? Well, we can talk about deadbanding values and deadbanding theory forever and ever, but for this simple application, it saved you 87% of your cloud storage. So what you're reading in versus what you're publishing in the cloud, saving you 87%. When you talk about cloud storage costs, it gets 87% is pretty significant. So that's what you've just seen. To deploy an application or a configuration as we just did, it's as easy to do it to one as it is to the 70,000 for some customers that we have out there. And it's being done every single day for numerous customers, numerous ways with their applications that they've developed, and it makes it real simple. That's the end of the demo. I wish it could have been live because it is a little more interactive, but hope you get the idea that this is real. We do it every day. And if you are interested and you want to learn more, my workshop this afternoon at 2:30, there's still room. Please register. It's on your agenda. You click the link, register. We'll get you signed up, and we'll actually start from scratch, getting data to the cloud where you can see it using Edge Manager for real.
Is there anything that happens if you come to that class and register?
Thank you for asking, Bill. If you come to that class and you register, you will be given, the first 50 will be given a free Dell Gateway 3002 device with Predix Edge, the latest Predix Edge installed on it, and you can take that home and you can stream data to the cloud to your heart's desire.
Whew. Good. All right. Thank you, Mike. Let me bring us home here. So there's a number of different ways that you can deploy Predix Edge. The first one that Mike mentioned, where we have a turnkey solution with our partner Dell, the Dell Gateway 3002. Also, Arrow is a key partner of ours in terms of our distribution of that. Ready to go essentially has Predix Edge installed out of the box. The second is if you want to deploy on existing hardware, essentially as a virtual machine, we make that available as an option. You just need to have the VMware hypervisor. And then the third is if you have your own custom-built hardware, and some of our customers do this today, where they have a very specific form factor that they want to use, they've already pre-negotiated with an OEM, we make available the embedded image where they can essentially install that on that custom device. So those are the three different options that we support today. This has been generally available. We launched the Predix Edge 2.0 in June of 2018. Bill mentioned earlier the Predix Machine or Predix Edge 1.0 was released a few years prior. It's available today. Many of our customers will actually buy it along with some of our industrial applications. So asset performance management, operations performance management, Predix Essentials, which essentially is a simplified version of our Predix platform. But you can buy it standalone as well, depending upon what your purchase preferences are. There's a lot of support available. We have Predix.io, where we make available tools, tutorials, sample code, and more. And then there's a lot of partners that we work with to essentially make this successful. We mentioned Intel, Dell, Arrow. The partnership with GE Research is really important in terms of continuing to add additional capabilities and more innovation into this stack. And so with that, we'll thank you for taking the time. We do have the demo booth, so if you want to see this live, we also have 2 other sessions taking place today. Let me stop there. I think we have maybe a few minutes for questions.
Mine's more a thank you. I want to thank you guys for taking this all the way to the finish line. And I think, for everybody in the room, I've been a big fan of this since the beginning. And I think it's our turn now to actually start deploying some value generating applications on it. And I encourage everybody to go to the session. I think you're going to walk away with a piece of hardware that actually you'll take out of the box, you'll plug in, you'll start writing your first analytic, and it's time to start making some money. So thank you, Dan.
Great, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that, right? As one of the people who sat there and played around with Docker and started this all off, to see you guys pull, like Joel said, pull it across the power line. I am so proud of the GE team, all of us. This is great.
Wonderful, thank you, thank you. Definitely has been a partnership. Good, any other questions? Okay, well again, we're here. If you want to see the demo, please do stop by the demo booth. And I think we're going into a break now, so we can also stick around and answer any other questions you may have.
Guys?